Hi everybody. I decided to do a small part two version of this the video I did before related to D-Day and the Andy Rooney rerun, I think they call it, or whatever, from 2004, from 60 Minutes when he reflects on D-Day. I guess honestly it's embarrassing. I can find out, well, it's embarrassing in some ways. You know, those people that dealt with it. I mean, for me to bitch about anything, when you think about what those people have to deal with, and just the general population of the countries, including London and England and everywhere, that had to deal with this. It wasn't that long ago. Now it seems to be 80 years ago. But when I first got to Europe the first time in '84, I got hit in the head with a car in New Orleans, and I thought, well, insurance money allowed me. Sorry, I'm picking a splinter. That's my war injury, a fucking splinter. Anyway, the point is that I went to see my relatives in Belgium. I'd met them when I was a kid, and then I was 27, so when I saw them again in Belgium, and they took me to a place where they live, in this town called Stavelot, which is Walloon, the French part of Belgium, and the northern Belgium part of Belgium is called Flanders. Is that right, Flanders? It's been a while. Anyway, they speak Dutch or they speak Flemish in Flanders, and French in Walloon. My cousin spoke French. My dad's cousin spoke French, and her sons. Andre was one of her sons. Her younger son was my age, and he was named after a resistance fighter. I'm not sure if it was from a French resistance fighter or I suppose it was a Belgian resistance fighter. And then I went upstairs to where I was staying, and Andre, I had been trying to learn French. Andre explained to me that in this room there were American soldiers that had been, I think American soldiers, I hope maybe, shooting at Germans, in the town, because the house was up on a hill, and that was 40 years before. It was 1984, and they got to Normandy in June '44, and so they were on the continent, and they made their way towards Germany through Belgium. And anyway, I know that the Nazis did a heavy massacre in that town, and so you're just sort of being hit with all this stuff, because you heard about it since you were a kid. And when I was a young child, I was on the patio with my dad, and there was somebody over there, I guess I was 6 or 7, and I could see he had this strange scar on his neck, and I said, because even when you're a kid at that age, I guess, the war was, that was 18, 20 years before. Anyway, I said, is that a bullet hole, Mr. Whatever? And I don't know what he said, but my dad, he himself had lost a lot of his hearing because doing recon pictures, and I think I mentioned that in the other video, in Colorado, so he never got to go overseas with his unit, but nonetheless, he suffered greatly from uh, the guns, the big cannons go off, and they blasted his ears so out. So pretty much, he was like 90% deaf. Yeah, I say he had his war injury right there in Colorado, but he survived the war, thankfully, and he met my mom at, forgive me if this is a repeat of the other video, in Chickasha, Oklahoma, at Fort Sill. She was a speech therapist dealing with heavy-duty burn victims and teaching them how to talk. But I think I'm repeating myself. Anyway, forgive me for that. But the thing is that it's just, so this man had this bullet hole in his neck, and Dad said, well, you can't ask these people that. So there were a lot of people around my neighborhood. It was outside of Washington, D.C., about 5 or 6 miles. A lot of generals, a lot of current military people. And they got in a place on a lake, so there was people when it was cheap, and there were, military officers and congressmen and people like that. My dad was a photographer, as I mentioned. Actually, he took Frank Sinatra's first wedding pictures in New York with his Italian partner. That's a claim to fame on my dad's side. And my mom's, one of her claims to fame was that she beat 3 FBI agents in pistol practice. So, and she had a 22. We grew up with a 22 that my sister used. And I like shooting pistols at targets. But like a friend of mine I was just talking to said, from the beginning, pistols, guns, they're man killers. And they used them pretty heavy duty in World War II. And that's what was going on. So you get there the first night in Europe, and there was this gun battle outside the window. I'm sleeping. Wow. That's about all I gotta say to that, man. That's pretty heavy blues. And so, to add on to this little subject, okay, I went back home after about 7 months there, and I wound up moving to Europe in '89 to Holland after, cause I did a fair amount of touring there, and well, before that, and then I decided that the work was better, get paid better, and I had a girlfriend in Holland, and I went over there and lived with her. And then, but coincidentally, it was right near where R.L. Burnside recorded in Groningen, Holland, and I'd been there. It was a record store, Swingmaster Records. And if you want to hear some great R.L. Burnside acoustic blues type stuff, get some Swingmaster Records. Maybe they're being distributed by Fat Possum now. But anyway, so at the I moved to a place that was kind of a generic kind of townhouse type thing but then about 8 months later we moved to an old farmhouse out in the country, and so the place I moved to was about 100 years old, maybe less, 80, but during the war, a Jewish butcher and his mother lived there. So the way that house was that they had the animals and inside their house in a barn inside their house, not a separate barn outside their house. It wasn't a large house. So they only had I guess he just had the animals that he didn't have a lot, but I suppose he butchered them there. Anyway, that was a separate area from the house, but part of the house. And he had been told by the neighbors, Mr. Swindelman, who went into hiding when the Nazis came, and it was across the street. And he'd been told, you gotta leave, they're gonna come after you. And he didn't think it was that big of a deal. Well, they did. They got him. They got he and his mom. God only knows, what happened. And anyway, you can't help but kind of like reflect on it when you're there and you're around. Now it's been, even if it is 80 years later, it's still got to be, it was a hard time, and especially I think in the north during that last year occupation, there was a lot of people starved, and my ex-girlfriend, her family, some of her family, hid Jews and stuff. I think her grandfather did, and let's see, what else do I have to add to this? Well, just, I don't even know. It's just the whole thing, you know, uh, all those, yeah, I guess when I went there, I remember the Dutch people that I played with or knew went over there to Germany, and I remember a couple of people, but it was a familiar theme that they didn't, no problem with the younger Germans, but the older Germans they had problems with. They still felt bitterness. And I know that I can see how they could feel that, but at the same time, I mean, it's the so many Germans that were brainwashed at that time by this person, and you can't. This is all coming up just because of this, anniversary, 80th anniversary, and but it is strange, when you take the train at that time, now going back to 84, I took the train to Cologne, and from Brussels, I guess, and I went to see some friends, German friends that my friend in New Orleans had introduced me to, and the train as it crosses into from Germany into Germany, it was a strange feeling after years of hearing about, Germany and World War II and all these movies, but nothing can take the place of the reality of it. But they left the cathedral in Cologne alone, and and that was beautiful that they left it. Actually, I'm getting my dates confused. I went to Ulm, Germany. No, another place in Germany the first time to visit people, and then later on I went to Cologne when I went to a booking agent. Sorry, and that cathedral is amazing. But um, it's just I did a lot of gigs in Germany, and I thought the German audience was fantastic. I liked them better than the Dutch audience, honestly. They were more receptive. The Dutch seemed to be more glazed to it. And then when the wall went down in '89, and I started to do some touring. I think it was with RL at first in 1990 there, and in East Germany, and it was real different. It was much poorer and more backward in a way at that time. But just going back to this D-Day remembrance, I don't know why it affected me kind of this year more than other years, but I just suppose, just thinking, how grateful I am to be alive, and just the reality of, again, of what those people really, really, really gave up a lot, many, their lives, so that people like me can reflect on it 80 years later, and what it meant. I mean, sometimes I feel guilty that I haven't had to face, those kind of challenges in my life, but mostly I feel just grateful as hell, you know, that I haven't, because it's no joke being shot at. I mean, have I ever been shot at? Not on purpose, but I've seen people get shot at. And there's a funny R.L. Burnside story. It's not so funny. Some lady shot at somebody else at a house party, early in the morning. She was okay. She didn't get shot, but this woman was shooting at another woman, and then, they got everything settled, and then, you know, I had fallen asleep in a vacant car in the yard, and then this guy, it's getting to be dawn, this guy says he just doesn't understand, this woman shooting this other woman. He goes, I don't understand. She's shooting at her. What's the problem? Only person I ever shot at was my wife. I'm like, okay, his wife. Anyway, but during World War II, you get that man, a funny story and everything. But going back to that, yeah, man, all those heavy duty guns going off, all the smoke. Well, Andy Rooney, in case you guys don't find it, basically explained, it's common knowledge, tank crews drowning in 20 feet of water, dead rows of dead Americans with just their combat boots sticking out. This is the fourth day he got there. Artillery fire being shot at by the Germans towards the beach from the other side, just blindly trying to blow up whatever they could blow up. But basically, he just said, in case you guys don't see it, and I hope you see the real thing, that he basically said, you know, um, for anybody that thinks the world is a bad news place, selfish, and basically he said selfish, and not so nice, and a lot. He says, take a trip to the cemeteries in Normandy and look at all the dead who gave up their lives to fight for what they believed in. The world, for whatever it is right now, however it is, and this was 20 years ago when he did this, it's what it is. But during that time, the point was, he said, there are only a few times in history when a collective or a group of people could come together and really make a change for the better of society, of the world. And he said, I think June 4th, 1944 was one of those days, the D-Day landings, when the Canadians and the Americans and the English got together and they pushed this fascist Nazi regime, out of Europe. Many were drafted, many volunteered, but it was. He said, it was an unselfish act to create a better world, a better humanity was at its height of beauty, so to speak. That's in my words. But, you know, when countries and politicians and soldiers and farmers from England and America and Canada, people that don't even know how to spell the word, Germany or whatever, but they come together because they know that these people are doing this wrong thing and they're there and they're seasick, and then they go and they get onto the beach and they see their friends blasted, and they're there and they're believing in this collection of these three countries, and then all the people that surrounded them, the resistance people, my girlfriends, in Holland, and my relatives in Belgium, and my poor dad didn't get to go, but gratefully didn't. My mom who treated these war-torn injuries, and all the millions of people like them. I mean, at that time, these people came together to create a better world. And that's about it. I think that's what Andy Rooney was really trying to say. And I don't even have anything more to put in my mind about that. I mean, it's just amazing. So this year, this time, when I'm 67, I just want to take a second. I was there. No, I wasn't there during that 40th anniversary. I went there after that. But I was there, I think, for the 45th anniversary. I mean, and it was a place I always wanted to go. I did not get to Normandy, unfortunately, when I lived in Europe. Had a gig there, but got canceled because I couldn't make it because the jet plane he was on had to turn back to New York. And he had to come 2 days later. But that was kind of goofy, not to it. But there was a concentration camp in Holland I'd go to with my partner in it called Westerbork. And that was something I forgot to mention. And it was in the woods, and on the edge of it was the commandant's house, and it was where Anne Frank was taken and many other Jews. And it's very quiet, eerie place. The Dutch used it after their own war in Indonesia to house the people that came in. The Indonesians fought the Moluccans, and anyway, that's another story. But during the war, German concentration camp, and it's not like the buildings are up. It's not like the other concentration camps I hear in Europe. It's the only one I've been to, and it's mostly monuments of like crosses and Jewish stars and things and whatever. But at the end of it, towards the woods, there are these railroad tracks that go up into the sky, like all those people that were there. The train ran from there to Auschwitz, and it was out in the woods, and it was when we were there. The few times I was there, no one else was there but us, and it was just you could feel it. You could feel it. The same as as like other battle sites when no one is around, and so you see a wall and you know that it's been blasted by mortars and whatever. I don't know how much is still there, but this year I'm just going to do a little remembering and a little bit of praying, and thank God that those men and women and that died for all of us. Thank God that they had the courage to live and die and suffer horrible injuries. And I know that all wars can be said about that, but there are some wars that stick out more than others that really mean something, and this one did. I am half Presbyterian, half Jewish. My aunt, or my dad's cousin, and my great aunt were on a list of people to be shot, by the Nazis, but somehow they escaped it. And I don't particularly care that much about my that side. I was raised Presbyterian, and in fact, the Jewish mafia killed my grandfather, so I don't have a lot of because he wouldn't make payments. So it's not like I care that much about that side of my family, but I sure don't think they should. The point is that there is that part of me too that I have to understand that was there. my relatives, there. And the other part, they were from, my grandfather was from Ukraine. And, my great aunt, she said, I had Hitler for breakfast. No, how was it? She goes, I forgot who. But she said, I have, well, let's just play it like that. I had Stalin for breakfast and Hitler for dessert. Now, that's a one hell of a way to live. All right. Thanks for putting up with this rant, and catch you all later. Bye-bye.